All right. Got another guest on today. Got Greg Herceg here, the at Volleyball Strength Coach on Instagram. I've been following you. I just learning about you. I've been following you. Your stuff, your content is phenomenal. Um, Welcome to the podcast today.
Yeah, thank you. This is actually my first podcast experience, so I'm excited to do this and kind of get this aspect of my social media going. So
Yeah, absolutely. Can you, because I'm curious to know, can you give me a quick introduction of maybe some quick history, why you're doing what you're doing? Love to hear.
yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's going to be really cool to start doing things like this and connecting with people like yourself. From a volleyball perspective, I've been playing since the seventh grade. Both my parents played recreationally, so they got me into CYO, and then I played all through high school, and then I played 4 years for Ball State University. I was a right side there, and I was a first team all conference there my senior season. After that, I was just kind of a mess. A lot of pain, my back, my knees, my shoulder, pretty typical stuff. So I took about 3 years off from volleyball, got into CrossFit and Olympic lifting, really took to especially the Olympic lifting really well, loved it. Um, Went back, this is now living in Wisconsin, started playing a little bit of volleyball again, moved to Minnesota, stopped, and then 2 years ago I moved back to Cleveland, and I've just been kind of full in on primarily beach volleyball ever since then. From a strength conditioning perspective, while I was at Ball State, I got my degree in exercise science with a minor in sports medicine. I actually stayed there and got my master's degree in sports performance, where we worked directly with the athletes. At that time, I was also a CrossFit coach specializing in Olympic lifting, and then continued to do CrossFit coaching, Olympic lifting coaching, and then personal training since then. And then as of a couple summers ago, I started the volleyball strength coach page, and really just kind of wanted to get into taking all of this information that I had accumulated and like really niching it down to like specifically to volleyball players.
Yeah.
I feel like it's not a huge market, and the information just needs to get to the players like ourselves to just make everybody healthier, more athletic, increase longevity, everything like that.
One of the man, it's such a similar story. I played basketball at the Citadel, and all conference started, and it does this. It's the same kind. It's a similar wear and tear. You're not max jumping as much. So when I started playing volleyball, the pains actually became worse
Mm.
because you're max jumping all the time. And I was trying to figure out what tweak, what am I doing wrong? There's no way my body should be like this. I was 27 and like just disabled. Like didn't even want to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah,
Are you going
it
through
beats up
similar
on you.
pains? It's like it'd be on the right side or the left side. Maybe it's in your shoulder. It just moves around.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, the knees are bad. Like, for volleyball players, knees start to go like in high school. I was actually 16 the first time I injured my back. So I was at the local YMCA squatting in a Smith machine, and I threw my back out. Um, Ironically, just we know how we feel about the Smith machine generally. So a lot of back pain ever since then. And that was a big one for me. I actually had to sit a little bit of my senior season because my back pain was so bad. And just like part of my motivation for all of this is, if I knew then what I know now, I feel like I would have been able to, help the situation a lot compared to what it was.
Well, I think one of the problems, this is my 2 cents, is like there are people who are vertical jump coaches, like vertical jump, just jumping, but it doesn't like it's not making a complete athlete in my opinion. So like
Hmm.
I've read Vertical Jump Bible, I think it's 2.0 now. There's like a second edition, and it's all about like just max loading, and there's not a lot of like things talking about range of motion versus that power development and what that really means for the person.
Hmm.
What's your experience there?
So coming from an Olympic lifting background, like squatting below parallel has like always been the thing. And I had a lot of still knee pain with that, but I knew the importance of it for a long time. And then, obviously you and I kind of got introduced through us both doing ATG programming. And that's such a big emphasis on there, because you can't just max load all of the time. There needs to be that balance, which is a huge component of the ATG programs, is balance from, you know, front to back, side to side, everything like that. And so, you know, there's more to just the max effort vertical jumping to try and increase your vertical. It's, are you healthy through a full range of motion? Are you strong through a full range of motion? And can you get into these positions that we need to be able to get into as volleyball players, which is kind of a big theme of, you know, what I do with the knees over toes, and then with the spinal movement stuff that we talked about too.
Well, and so what I did last summer, I went through this. I was really into the Ryan Flaherty aspect of things, which,
okay,
I don't know if you've followed him at all. It's really just it's about how much force you can put in the force plate relative to your strength through the hex bar. He's like, so if you want to be like a world-class athlete, you're going to be like 3 or higher for a 1 rep max on the hex bar. So I like got obsessed with it. And then eventually, like, you know, I was like up to like 450 or 460, and you hit this hard plateau. Then you throw your back out because you're like always doing these like 85% rep things all the time. And once that happened, I switched to knees over toes, didn't touch anything over 200 pounds. I don't even think I've touched anything over 150 pounds in this year since December, so 8 months. And I'm jumping higher. I put a cup on top of the antenna. I wasn't even close to that when I was picking up this hex bar. Have you seen similar kind of progressions for your jumping? Because you apply it to yourself, a lot of this ATG and your own programming.
Yeah, so I actually hit what I call like a post-grad PR last Saturday. So when I was in school, my normal kind of touch, we would touch twice a year, was 11'2" on the approach and 10'8" on the standing counter movement jump. And I'm actually back to 10'8" on a counter movement jump, and I just touched 11'1" on an approach jump. Now my best ever was 11'4" and 10'10", so that's my goal at, you know, in my 30s, currently 20 to 25 pounds heavier, to get back to where I was. And yeah, so today I did body weight on the bar plus bands for some back squats, and that's double the most weight I've put on the bar for a long time, just because going through these ATG programs, I think 50% body weight was the heaviest I went for like ATG split squats.
Right.
But still, just for a lot of it for me was the aspect of the lower leg development. Coming from that Olympic lifting background, it was like, kind of like you said, like power production. The calves don't produce a lot of power, so we don't really need to train them. Like, you'll get enough training for your calves playing and doing plyometrics. And so that was just a huge missing piece for me this whole time. And then when I was in Wisconsin getting back into volleyball, I was doing like machine calf raises just for like aesthetics, to like get my calves bigger.
Hard.
Yeah. And then I was like, man, this actually like feels really good for jumping. You get that extra little bit of pop. And now
a little responsive.
Knowing what I know about like the elasticity components and, you know, the things like that, it's such a huge missing piece that I am now trying to bring back up, that I think I've done pretty well on. One of the big eye-opening things for me was actually from a guy named Cal Dietz, who is the head strength conditioning coach at the University of Minnesota. He wrote Triphasic Training, and he talked about basically, it doesn't matter how much force your glutes and quads can produce if your calves, ankles, and feet are not strong enough to translate all of that force into the floor. So if that is weak down there, then so much of that force gets dissipated. You can only produce and actually put into the floor as much force as your calves and your ankles can really handle. And that was like a huge light bulb moment for me. That just happened to line up very well with coming across Ben and all of his like lower leg standards that he has.
Well, the tibialis raise. Now I've been doing it. Whatever. I don't remember what this. I only have like, I floss band weight to my foot and do it. I don't have a tib bar or whatever. but I like the lower part of my knee used to hurt from time to time. There's like no lower knee pain, and I feel like that's attributed a lot to I think it's the patellar tendons, the one below.
Yep, it is.
You didn't mention it, but I'm assuming that's part of what you're talking about in that lower leg development.
Absolutely, yeah. So I have done like just a tiny bit of tib training in the past, doing like heel walks. So just straight leg, like walking on your heel. I did that with some like toe walks and some lateral ankle walks. That was a warm up I used to do, kind of after college. But then, coming across Ben, even just with the body weight, like I realized how far behind I was, on that. So I actually, I built a tib bar for like $20 out of a PVC pipe. And I actually have two. I have one at my home gym and one at my work gym. So I can just like go to town on those now.
Yeah. Is it worth it so I clicked on your link tree and you've got like a link to a Reddit post that shows how to build it. How much time does it take? Because I'm just curious about building one myself.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Really?
So
It's like
yeah,
to Home Depot and then 5 minutes kind of thing?
yeah. So the first one I built like I bought a PVC cutter. So you just like you stick it in and you ratchet it closed and it'll cut the PVC pipe in like 10 seconds. So you have to make like 5 cuts total and you just glue it all together. It's so fast. It almost makes you feel like you're doing it wrong, but it's super cheap, super fast.
Okay.
And so far, I mean, I do my standards, like my numbers at 240 pounds body weight, which is like 50 to 60 pounds on the tib bar, and it can handle it perfectly fine. I can't imagine too many people are going to need to go too much heavier than that. So
No, not volleyball players for the most part. How tall are you?
I'm 6'3".
6'3"?
Yeah, I topped out. So when I wasn't playing volleyball, I was the highest I got was 259 pounds of like relatively lean. Right now I'm in like the low 230s, and I want to get down to like 225 is my goal right now, just to be able to. I'm playing doubles now, just to be able to move better. And I was getting a lot of nagging injuries, so I feel like having less body mass is going to be a big contributing factor to less of these like little tweaks and stuff that I was getting. And so far that's proven to be true.
That's I think you're right. Last year I was weighing in like a solid 240, 242. This year I'm 225, but people are like the difference in look is like, "Oh, you look like you lost 35, 40 pounds." But really what happened was I just traded that out for fat. I mean, fat for muscle, through some of these trainings, like the muscles are more dense. Which I just want to pivot into like a quick like topic about nutrition. You look pretty like jacked. Let's look at your videos. And I guess what are you doing? What are some like quick tips that's helped keep you looking good?
Yeah, so currently I'm back, following the vertical diet. If you've heard of the vertical diet from Stan Efferding, I got into that a few years ago when I was in Minnesota, and it's just like it's one of those things. It's just like ATG, where it just like makes logical sense to me. It's like if you just eat these foods, you get your micronutrients, and then you can add these foods to get all your macronutrients. And I was like, cool, I like all of these foods. Like this makes a lot of sense. And then, with all of the strongman competitors, CrossFit athletes, just powerlifting guys, like all of these athletes that started kind of going on board with the vertical diet, I was like, cool, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. Like, let me jump on that. So I've been back doing that. And then just recently, I'm just reducing my carbs a little bit, just to try to take that next step in some fat loss. Because I've been plateaued around the low 230s for a little bit now. So it's just like, for me with nutrition, it's just like a stepping stone kind of thing where it's like you do one thing for a while. Once you plateau, you need to make a change. Stick with that. Once you plateau, you need to make a change. I'm not a big calorie counting, macro counting guy anymore. I'm a certified nutrition coach through Precision Nutrition, and they save like macro and calorie counting for like the higher level, like level 2, level 3 clients, which would be like collegiate professional athletes, that kind of things. The average person doesn't really need to. It's more of a behavioral change, kind of learning healthy habits and how to be healthy, how food affects you and makes you feel, and things like that more so.
I think you're hitting the nail on the head with behavioral habits is like, so I went, there was a solid, I did like this 60 days where I like tracked literally every single thing I ate. I had never done it before. And I think everyone should do it at some point because you'll educate yourself and then it's going to make you understand what you're doing throughout the day. So I did that, and now I'm like, oh my gosh, like when you go just eat like 4 slices of pizza, that's just straight carbs, but there's like no protein in it at all. There's a like that amount of food, like 4 pieces of pizza is a lot of food, but it's also a lot of calories, and they're just empty. They're not actually helping you. The word I use is grow, or recover. But once you start tracking it and look at it, you're like, oh, I could have 4 slices of pizza or like a big ass piece of chicken with some rice, and you're not going to be hungry later at midnight or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. It needs to be used as like an educational experience. And what it can do is turn into like you're letting the machine tell you how to feel. You know what I mean? Like with the numbers and everything like that. But if you can use it to, learn how much 8 ounces of chicken, like how much protein that really is, or how many calories and or carbs or fat or protein are really in this, and use it for an educational piece, I think there's some value in that for sure. But then it's like you just can't let that control you and like kind of run your life.
Well, and that's what was happening was like then volleyball tournament. So I did it leading up to a set of volleyball tournaments because there wasn't much going on. And I was at home, so I was just working and eating at home the whole time. So I could control the whole environment. The problem is once you start traveling or going out enough, and then you're going to become like that social pariah. And people are going to look at you like, what are you doing? Like, it's just like you're counting how many chips you're eating or whatever. It's just, I totally agree, especially for the average person.
Yeah, I have found like now that I'm getting down to like the lower body fat percentages, like I need to do a little bit more weighing and measuring maybe than I was kind of throughout this process. But I try to keep it as minimal as I can because I know some of the stuff already, but it's like there's a big difference between like a serving of peanut butter and a spoonful of peanut butter. And so like having,
Yes.
that a little bit of extra accountability to not go overboard, it really does make a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, once you know, like once you know, and you've gone through and like measured it out and said, let whatever your numbers are. For me, it's like 3,000 calories a day,
Sure.
about what it is on a pretty active day. And once I know about what that is, you're just picking and choosing and moving through your day.
For
Uh,
sure. And I will say, just on the nutrition aspect, I do like to talk to people about what I do like during tournaments, especially because I feel like a lot of people are doing more of like the local tournaments where you're playing like game after game after game.
oh my
And I
god,
will
what do you do?
say,
What do you? Because I want to know because
mhm,
what do you do?
yeah, primarily carbs and fat. I do like very little protein during the day on days like that. Maybe like one time during the tournament if I have like a longer time to sit. So when you look at it, like realistically, protein is for recovery. You're not recovering during any of that time. That protein isn't going to be very adequately digested. You do need to be pretty parasympathetic in that kind of rest and digest, or we'll call it flow and freeze parasympathetic nervous system. And you're probably not going to get there. So I mostly do carbs and fat during that tournament time. And then obviously after the tournament, I'll do a lot more protein. So for example, I'll do some before I go, but I'll do like a big oatmeal bowl with, peanut butter, almond butter, blueberries, strawberries, chia seeds, sesame seeds, just throw all of that together. I like Greek yogurt with blueberries, before the tournament. But during the tournament, I like a lot of fruit. Bananas are like my go-to. Bring something like peanut butter to go with it. I like Cliff Bars. They're just very calorie dense, very carb dense. The one that I do that's like not super healthy, but those Nature Valley sweet and salty nut bars that have like the almonds and the almond butter on the bottom. For
Yeah.
whatever reason, those work phenomenally well for me. So it's sort of just continuing to get carbohydrates to be used as fuel for volleyball throughout the day. some fat because that's also used as fuel, and then that can kind of slow down the digestion, so you're not getting like bad blood sugar issues or things like that. And you can sprinkle in like a little bit of protein for that blood sugar benefit, but you don't want to do like a big protein rich meal if you're going to go out in the 80-degree sun and run around playing volleyball. That's just kind of a recipe for some GI issues for sure.
So for me, what I've noticed is the anything like nuts, like a heavier fat, like it destroys. I don't know why. Like I've almost cut those out of my diet. When I try to eat that during game day, that and super like something that's just straight sugar. So like a smoothie, I'll get a sugar rush thing. Like those two things, which you didn't mention smoothie, which probably for that reason it's too glycemic, I would assume. I don't know. Have you tried those? How would those like a smoothie work for you?
So I haven't tried a smoothie. What I'll do if I'm going to do something super glycemic is like walking onto the court. That's something I picked up from the guys from Strong Fit, which is like right before you work out, you do something higher glycemic, and that helps with more of the sympathetic nervous system, kind of that fight or flight, like get you ready. I have backed off of that a little bit because I realize you don't really want to be super sympathetic during volleyball. You want to be kind of maybe more neutral or like more in that parasympathetic where you can just kind of be like focused and sort of chill. Even though it's a very explosive sport, you're still playing for a decent duration per game. So you don't want to be like ramped up the entire time. You want to be able to kind of just focus and stay a little bit more neutral. But I have had success with that. I tried different things like just a shot of honey right before I go on. I found that I would lose focus, like just a little bit of like loss of focus. I tried agave right before I went on. That would make me like almost irritable. That happened a few times. It was bizarre. I've tried orange juice with cranberry juice, which is a very vertical diet thing. That was okay. But now I have these two different drink mixes that I use for hydration that are both phenomenal. So I can definitely talk about that. I'll add honey to those for some carbs, but not so much that it gives me that little bit of just like loss of focus.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. I like it. What kind of pivoting here, so you're talking about these beach volleyball tournaments, but I think indoor tournaments are the same. What about the training for beach versus indoor? Do you like, how do you look at an athlete specifically, or is there a difference in your mind? Is it position oriented? I'm not familiar with the indoor game. I know I kind of have an idea what the positions are, what their roles are. So I mean, is it position based, indoor, beach based, blocker, not a blocker? What do you kind of?
So realistically, I don't do that much different. All of the kind of basic things still apply. You know, the only big thing for beach, if you're going to play beach, you have to train, you have to be in the sand. It's like if you've been playing indoor and then you go and try to do anything in the sand, your calves are going to blow up. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to do your vertical jump training and speed training in the sand. There's actually potentially some negative components to that if you're not a beach volleyball player. But if you're playing beach volleyball, you have to just spend time in the sand and get your feet and your calves and everything just used to that. The same way, if you're an indoor player, you need your body to get used to that impact. So I do my plyometrics at home, and I end up doing them on my concrete driveway. And I went and played indoor for the first time in like a year and a half, and I was not sore. Like I thought I was going to be a mess the next day. And because I had been doing plyometric training on concrete, like in my volleyball shoes, I actually felt fine. Otherwise, I find that people who play beach volleyball, because it's doubles, they just need a higher level of conditioning. You need both no matter what. But for beach volleyball, you're like, it's just way harder. You're exerting way more energy. You have to, there's 2 of you versus 6 of you. It does require like a much larger energy output and a much larger amount of conditioning necessary to be effective.
So would you say sets and reps would be just higher, like more volume in the weight room too, for a beach player? Like maybe the weight's lower, but maybe like more sustained volume with some of these movements, or?
I actually do them exactly the same.
Exactly
I
the
don't
same.
think it needs to be that specific. So any of those changes, most of that is going to go or come from like being on the court or on the sand.
Okay.
So even I had a guy today ask me about like, oh, what drills can I do to be a faster libero? I was like, well, you still just need the lower leg strength. You need the strength in general, the elasticity, the speed, but then you need to take that to the court and then put that speed to use. And then the on court reps are really going to be the difference maker there.
Most
I
important.
don't do very much different. Like it doesn't need to be that sport specific unless I was, if I was working directly with a beach volleyball pair where one guy was a defender and one guy was a blocker, maybe I would change a few things at like a professional level. But other than that, anything is going to
Okay.
be, the general stuff is going to be really beneficial.
And
Sure.
I mean, the blocker and the defender pretty much do the same thing throughout a match. I mean, the blocker's going to end up playing defense at some point in some rally. The defender's going to end up blocking.
Yeah.
So I mean, that makes everyone serves, everyone sets and hits.
Right.
Like,
Right. So it's like maybe the blocker gets a few more jumping reps and the defender has a bit more sprinting to do. But overall, I mean, it's just a ton of work for both of them for sure.
okay. So one of the, I think maybe both of us have a lot of interest in this is like the spinal mechanics for mobile athletes. So I don't even think it's just volleyball, basketball players, tennis players, are all going to fall in the same category.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, when I got into this whole lifting thing, it was always about just being stiff. And I get it when you have these huge loads on your back. I wouldn't want to be taking 400 pounds and like trying to jerk on that disc. What has your experience been in terms of training your spinal mechanics in different movements and getting stronger in those awkward positions?
Yeah. So again, just from my Olympic lifting background, it was the same thing. Like when I was coming up in school, that's when planks were getting like really big. Like people just loved planks. So it was all about, that's when kind of the core stabilization stuff was starting to peak in popularity. And then I got into Olympic lifting, which is all about being stiff. You don't need to or want to rotate, move, flex, extend very much at all. And so that's what we trained through our weight room. And that's kind of what I took, after that. And then, I would train that way, go play volleyball, and then my abs and my back would be so sore because I had never trained any kind of rotation. So I started incorporating some of that, especially recently, working on the unilateral aspects of things. My back pain is basically gone. And I think a lot of that is just training the single-sided stuff. So like the ATG split squat, which stretches out the psoas and strengthens the psoas, the quadratus lumborum raises, which I think are like a good precursor, along with the elephant walks to do Jefferson curls. Those are all going to be beneficial, but really the long story short is you do need both. So I put up the post about all of the different spinal positions you end up in volleyball, but realistically, when you contact, you're in a neutral spine position. And so you need to be strong in like a neutral spine so that you can put the force into the ball, but you also need to be safe in all of those other positions, because if you never train those, you're more susceptible to injury. It's exactly like knees over toes. It's if we never train the deep knee flexion, then when it happens, which it is going to happen, you're more susceptible to injury. And even thinking about something like volleyball, you're rotating, but you only ever rotate one direction. So a right-handed player is always going to open up the same way and then rotate the same way. If you never do any kind of reps to do that the opposite way, you're going to create those imbalances and just be asking for back pain and injury. And so you need to do both sides of that for sure.
You think that getting the left stronger, like getting stronger at these left movements, that you would actually get stronger at the right movement? Like your body would almost like, because it's being more balanced, you could develop more power in the right by being more balanced in the left?
Potentially, I'm not really sure, but I think it's definitely important as a volleyball player to work the opposite way, just so we can bring up the imbalances. That's the whole purpose of jump balance, which I think was another huge light bulb moment for me from ATG, was the idea of jump balance. And it kind of goes the same way for like any kind of unilateral sport. tennis, baseball, any kind of throwing sport where you have to try to balance out on the other side, or you're just going to be just at, like, maybe not now, but down the line for sure asking for trouble. Golf, man, golf is a big one. You need to figure out some way to stretch and strengthen all of that tissue so that you can stay healthy, basically.
What? So ankle mobility is kind of the next thing that comes to mind. Is I've been trying to figure this out. I've got a super jacked up ankle that got jacked up from basketball. Like it's like big, and it gets impinged, up in the front there. Is it possible for me to get it to the same level or to like good range of motion? This is something I've been trying to ask myself going through the ATG program, because the ankle mobility on my good ankle, it's like close to where it needs to be to like get full split squat depth. The other one's like gets like if the toe is there, it gets stuck right at the edge of the toe. It won't go any further. And I'm kind of curious, like, will that ever change? Because he talks about his knee, right? And he has the plastic piece in his knee, which I don't know if I do or don't believe him. But the point is can some of these movements help overcome those injuries?
Yeah, there's a couple of really important things there. If you've never tried to use the floss bands on your ankle, I would definitely do that. That's something that I picked up like years ago in school, and so I thought it was so cool when I saw Ben using that because I kind of forgot about it. But the floss bands can be used to help break up some of the scar tissue in there. So there could just be something that's physically impeding that ankle from moving forward anymore. So doing stuff with the floss bands where you're almost forcing it through that range of motion a little bit more could be beneficial. So if you haven't tried that, definitely try that. I think the other thing is just to make sure that you're strong in that position. So have you done like the single leg calf raises and checked like from your good leg to bad leg, like strength through the straight leg and the KOT calf raise?
The actual strength, like have I loaded it and seen like I don't even know, how do you load a calf raise? Do you like hold a plate in your hand or?
Yeah, so I'll typically do it like hold a dumbbell in one hand, hold on to something with the other hand, and then you just do 1 foot at a time. I think he had that in the old standards program where you would do like loaded, 10 reps of straight leg or 10 reps of bent knee. But that would be valuable just for you as a test
Yeah.
because you need to be strong through that range of motion. So one thing that Ben said, again, another big light bulb moment was um, you can do a lot of flexibility training and increase your range of motion, but your body won't let you keep it unless you're strong in that range of motion, because then kind of your brain and your nervous system know that it's okay for you to be there because you have the strength to do activities there. And
So
that was like a big thing for me.
yeah, what's really, I went through a 2-month period or 3 months, October through December last year. So do you know who Kelly Starrett is?
Yep.
He's got Mobility WOD, and he's all about doing all these Mobility WOD things. And I think that they're great, by the way. But they do, and he's like, you need to be doing this every single day. But the problem is it doesn't maintain the change, right? So I'm gonna spend 15 minutes with the floss band, like putting the rib back in place or whatever, but you never loaded the tissue. And so when you wake up the next morning, you're just back to where you were. And I think that's what separates the ATG program from what Kelly sells. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, I think just one of the big components of it is like loading through stretched positions. You look at the ATG split squat, you're really stretching the psoas on the back leg, really stretching the ankle on the front leg, and that, your knee, obviously, if you don't have the range of motion there. But strengthening those at the same time is huge. It's not just about the stretching aspect of things. You need to be strengthening those. So I actually pair in my program, I pair the ATG split squat with like a direct hip flexor psoas raise, because I have found when you start to get connection to a muscle, it allows you to stretch farther into it too. So I actually found this by accident. I would have someone do an ATG split squat, and then they would do a seated psoas raise on actually concentrating on finding some connection to the psoas. And then their next set, they could get a little bit lower in the ATG split squat. And so, yeah, like maybe they stretched it out from the first time, but it's been consistent where now I think it's because you have a little bit better of a connection to that muscle. your body will allow you to stretch through that a little bit more.
So you're almost taking one of the components to open up the whole, like you're tweaking one of the parts of the ATG split squat to get the whole thing to move better. You're like, oh, that's where you're limited. I'm going to open you up there. Then let's go put the bar back on, or whatever weight they're doing, and let's do it again.
Yeah. So what you could try is like in between sets of ATG split squat, do a set of like single leg calf raises, you know, either maybe straight leg or bent knee in that real deep knee flexion position. The KOT calf raise is probably more useful, but I would do both because they both need to be able to stretch. And then you can maybe see like going to a full or almost full stretch in that ankle through the calf raise, if that'll then allow you to get lower into the split squat.
That's funny you mentioned the strength. If you look at my calves, like one's twice as big as the other, like literally. So there's I mean, it's definitely gonna be, if you asked me to go test it, it will be weaker. There's no doubt. So I will take note, and I will try that next week when I get to split day.
And then you think like it goes back to what we talked about earlier for jumping. Like if your glutes and quads are producing a ton of force, but your ankles aren't, it's not going into the floor. If you have one calf and one ankle that's way stronger than the other, you're limited by the weaker one. So you're going to want to bring up that stronger one, because it doesn't even matter how much stronger the other one is, because you're going to be limited by the weak one. And then that's going to just, you know, kind of go up the chain and cause other problems. So I tore my calf in October of 2019, playing indoor for the first time in like years. Second time in years, you know, the first time was 2 days earlier, and it put me out for like probably 9 months of before I was kind of back. And that was right before I found ATG. The stuff that I was doing, a lot of it translated. Like I realized a lot of sled work really helped rehab that ankle.
Oh, that makes sense. Then, you're getting in that position and you're having to push out of it. It's like it's a KOT calf raise kind of.
Yeah, and it is. And it's strengthening, but it's also like that stiffening too. So retraining that ankle stiffness and then that elastic component as well. That was a big thing for me. And then when I got into ATG, I sort of forgot about that. But then he brought in like the heavy sled drive. And then that like reminded me, I was like, oh yeah, when I was playing 2 summers ago, like this really helped me. Or it was last summer, this like really helped me. So I started doing that again too. And, you know, getting like a super loaded, super stiff, but like way knee over toe position with like just a really heavy sled push. You know, obviously the backwards sled is probably like number one thing to do to help fix your knees to start. But I think a heavy sled push is also extremely beneficial.
The backwards running I do in every warm up at practice. Like if I come out there, I'll just run to the net and then backwards run to the like 4 or 5 times. And it always just magically unlocks the knee. Maybe it's psychological at this point, but if I come in at my knee's a little sore, I do 4 little down and backs, I'm good to go. I'm almost ready to play.
Yeah. It's been fantastic. Like if I have times where my knee is just kind of sore, you know, just a little inflamed or something from playing, I'll go do 10 minutes backwards. And then like later in the day, that's just gone. I think it's so valuable. And it's so easy. You can do it regardless of what equipment you have. You don't even need a treadmill. If you got a partner and some bands, you can go backwards. I put a reel up on my post one day of like just putting your butt against the wall in socks and like sliding your feet on the floor to like pretend like you're going backwards. So yeah, you would like lean against. I actually saw that from a guy on Instagram. He put it on his story. I think ATG reposted it. So you're just in socks on like a hardwood floor, and then down into like almost a squat, and then like sliding your feet on the floor to like pretend like you're walking backwards, but you're not actually moving. So it's like literally anybody can do that. But even the backwards walking, backwards running, like there's so many options to just strengthen that knee over toe position backwards. It's just a game changer.
So I'm going through this right now, and I'm battling with Skylar, who I'm playing with this season. How much hypertrophy training you really should be doing right leading up this season, right? So I got like Atlantic City coming up here, and then the 3 AVPs like 2 weeks later. And you know, I'm kind of curious. How do you? Because I'm trying to figure this out. Because the ATG thing's new to me. and I'm trying to figure out, do I just like go to more like of a zero kind of thing? I don't, kind of curious.
So we would kind of call that like you're like in season, right?
Right. I would
Um,
say starting today.
yeah. So I mean, you can do a couple things like for in season. You definitely that's when you want like your peak power production. So you can even look at, I was talking to a guy yesterday about maybe like a conjugate style thing, like one day is more volume, one day is more strength, one day is more power. I think at this point, it's basically staying healthy and then trying to just get as much power production and then as much maintenance of everything else as you can. So, like hypertrophy work, you're not going to be building a bunch of muscle if your nutrition isn't set up for that anyway. So with the amount of calories you're probably going to be burning from like practice and everything all the time, like you're probably not going to gain a lot of weight. Um, but those higher rep, like more hypertrophy range things or even higher are great for getting a lot of blood flow to a muscle or a joint, which is the only way anything ever heals is through blood flow. So that can be valuable, like 50 band pull aparts at the start of an upper body workout can do wonders in helping just your shoulder feel better or something like that.
So that he had mentioned. So he said, what you need to do is like, let's say VMO squats, which probably I don't think are a great one. Example, maybe. Well, I don't know. Let's use it as an example. He's got it. It's 10 by 10 in the dense programming, and like yesterday I did the 45 pounds, which was brutal, and then went and practiced, which that was brutal. I mean, like I literally felt like I had played a whole tournament like an hour into practice. Which to me that means that I did too much in the morning.
Sure.
But maybe just doing a 5x5, like 5 rounds of 5 reps, maybe. Like, is that the kind of tweak you'd want to like? You still want to be doing the movement, but not. I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah. So for like something like that, if we're looking like a 10 by 10 is like it's 100 reps, like you're pretty well into like a hypertrophy kind of zone with something like that.
Yeah.
Right now I'm doing basically no high rep work for my lower body. It's like my legs are plenty big enough. I'm not worried about them getting any bigger, maybe actually getting them a little bit smaller. So everything I'm doing is either like sets of 3 or sets of 5. So 3 is more for like that power production. If you're looking for max power, kind of 1 to 3 reps is your go-to. If you're looking for more like developing strength, you're more like that 3 to 6 kind of range through there. And so that's the changes I'm doing. So even for my program, I'm on standards right now. The VMO squats is still like 5 sets of 20. I do like sets of 5 of like a deep squat, just for a little bit more load, a little bit more power, because that's more focused on the goals that I need right now. I can hit the position fine, but I want to focus more on the strength and power side of things right now.
Okay. And you're saying that is like an in-season tweak. It would be like focus on some more like quick reps, power reps, but not a lot of volume, like not a lot of reps.
Yeah, you don't need to. I mean, if you're looking at traditional like power training for, something like that, you could do more sets, like 8, 9, 10 sets. But today, like for example, right before this, I was doing body weight on the bar with bands, and I worked up to 3 sets of 3 of like a banded speed squat. 3 sets of 3 at body weight plus bands, and that was kind of my top end sets for that.
Okay.
Last year when I was coaching, so I'm the assistant coach and strength conditioning coach for a D3 team. It's Baldwin Wallace University. And when they were in season last year, what we would do is like, they would play the weekend. Mondays, we would do a higher volume day because we were just trying to get a lot of blood flow. So like a lot of things to the knees, a lot of things to the shoulders, not so much weight that the volume was still like super high and going to do a lot of damage, but more of like a rehab type thing. And then we would do like a heavier day on Wednesday. And then if they came in on Friday, we would do like a high power production day. So then that would kind of like set them up for a little bit of power production, through the weekend. So they were a little bit more potentiated for something like jumping high for the games on the weekend.
Interesting. So you'll have them work out Friday before the game, the before game day. And it's not
We
like a
it
full rest day. It's
it would
really
depend on how they felt. If they were getting beat up, which if I'm doing my job right, they weren't getting as beat up. I will say we had no like injuries and nobody was out through injuries through the season. It was really good. Young team,
oh,
young
congrats,
kids, but
though.
we had
That's
no injuries. Yeah, it was awesome. But yeah, like it's not necessarily a hard workout. It's just lighter weight, really fast power production, kettlebell swings, banded squats, things like that, that aren't going to make them really sore the next day. They're going to prime their body to be more explosive so that they can be ready to play the next day.
interesting. That makes so what's funny is the second day of volleyball tournaments, I feel more athletic than the first day. And I do the same thing every time. I'll for Friday, like let's say it's a Saturday, Sunday tournament. Friday, I'll just do serve and pass, maybe hit 10 balls, not hard or really even go for it. And I'll feel like crap on Saturday every time. But if I make it to Sunday, which I usually do, I feel just like next level of, of like, wow, and so is that some of the priming you're talking about?
It could be. I mean, even on like that Friday, you can go and even take it to practice with you and just throw a med ball around. Like that's such a phenomenal power production, stretch shortening cycle work to just launch a med ball like back over your head or something like that,
Yeah.
where you're just doing a lot of motor unit recruitment, using a ton of muscles that you're going to use to jump, do some lateral throws, do some overhead throws, so that you're just kind of primed. It could be for you kind of the same thing where it's like, you spent all day or maybe it was just because you were moving all day. You were really focused on your nutrition and hydration all day. And then going into Sunday, you had all that stuff you have all of that like working really well for you. Probably got really good sleep that night because you played all day, stuff like that.
You're just exhausted, like in bed by 7.
Yeah.
Slept until 8. You got like 11 hours of sleep, whatever that is. Okay, I got two more questions that I had. One, upper body strength for volleyball players. Where do you stand on that? Like where's your goals?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I love about ATG is having those percentage goals for everybody, for even for the upper body. So I'm big on starting with body weight. So full range of motion push-ups, body weight rows with like a TRX, things like that, working into like dips and pull-ups. I think the upper body needs to be strong and mobile. You need to be able to get your arm through a full range of motion and be strong, like we said earlier, strong in that range of motion. But you definitely don't need to pack on size, and you definitely don't want to be stiff. Now, putting on muscle doesn't automatically make you stiff, but it can sort of inhibit maybe a little bit of range of motion. There's certain things you want to be stronger at, like a lot of upper back work is really important so that rotator cuff is very strong eccentrically. And you want to have like make sure the pecs and the lats are strong enough that they can take their fair share of load so that the shoulders doesn't have to. If you're like doing everything and everything you're doing is just with your shoulder, even like push-ups or overhead pressing, not even swinging, if the shoulder's taking too much volume, then that's not good. You need the pecs to work really well, and you need the lat and the teres to work really well so that they can take some load off of the shoulder and let it just kind of do what it needs to do. So I think you need to be strong. Weakness is never a strength, right? I think that was Mark Bell that Ben uses a lot now too. You need to be strong. You need to be super flexible in your upper body, but you don't need to be overly strong. So like when I was doing dense, it was the dumbbell press up to 25% of body weight in each hand. And I could do like double that, already when I got into the program.
Yeah, I thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
He's like only up to 10 rounds. And I was like, I've done 120 pounds for these reps before in the past. That's so funny. You noticed the same thing.
Yeah. And so a couple of the things with that is obviously you want that real big range of motion. And what I actually did in dense is once I could hit it with the flat, and then I would move to the incline, and I would just like increase the incline I was doing every week, because the standard's actually the same for the overhead press, which is a little bit a little bit interesting. So the weight you should be able to do for the overhead press is actually the weight that he has for dense for the chest press. So I would start to increase the incline week by week, you know, as it would get really easy with the 60s, I would just go up and up and up. And, you know, the thought for me was like, well, if I can do this, then like, I don't need to be able to do much more than this right now. You know, the rows were super easy, the presses were super easy, but I couldn't hit the standard for an external rotation and I couldn't hit the standard for a Powell raise. So then I
You
knew
can
I
hit
could
it.
focus my
The
attention.
external rotator one, you couldn't hit that one.
No, I can now, because
Okay.
that was 25 pounds for me for 10 reps.
Right. Same,
I can do that
thing.
now. Yeah, I can do that. You know, it's what I found really interesting is it's been kind of 50-50 for volleyball players, which arm is weaker, if it's their hitting arm or their non-hitting arm. I think it's actually, I would have to check, more people are weaker on that movement on their hitting arm. And
Okay.
I think that's just because of all of the damage that happens to that rotator cuff just from playing for so long. But yeah, I couldn't hit that. And I couldn't, the Powell raise, I'm still not even close on like the Powell raise standards. So it helps me know where to focus my attention. It's like my press doesn't really need to be stronger, but maybe my upper back still needs some work, you know?
Oh my gosh. I've been like, I'm in week, whatever I said, 10 or 11 of dense. And my arm is long is I don't have a short arm. And like, I just passed like the 17 and a half pounds and the goal's 25. And I'm sitting there like, this may take a year before this actually passes.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
feels freaking hard.
And that's when you really want to take it slow on that, like slow and perfect. It's like a Jefferson curl, one like fast, bad, like jerking rep. And that could be real bad for the shoulder. So it's not something you want to rush at all. Definitely.
One of the things I noticed, so when I passed the chest and the rows, which was super easy, I went and looked at what the standard is for the pull up and dip because I figured those kind of similar. And he wants you to load half body weight for 6 reps on each one. I've done a 45-pound pull up before on a straight bar, and that took me like 6 months to get that strong. I don't like. Have you been able to pass those or?
Not even close. They're significantly harder than the standards for dense. I think the most I've done on the dip now is a 45-pound plate and maybe a 45 for like a couple reps on a pull up. Those are 2 exercises I'm not super good at. Again, like we're volleyball players, like super long arms, super long levers that we're trying to move. And so it's like, do you really need to do that? I'm using them more of like quality, like, am I using my pec when I'm doing a dip, or am I just using all like anterior delt, like tricep works, but like, can I feel my pec during a dip? Can I feel my lat during a pull up, or am I doing a pull up like this? You know, if I'm doing a pull up like this, I don't care how much weight it is. You know, you want it to be a good quality rep with the shoulder blades down, so you're using the lat. And so I'm a little bit more focused on that. As opposed to like how much weight I'm actually moving. I'm kind of shifted more towards quality.
And I agree. It's especially for athletes, it's quality over numbers.
Always.
Last thing, I think like a hidden gem people don't talk about is like walking on like off days. Talked about, you hit on a really good point. The blood flow is the only way to get recovery. And when you're super banged up on an off day, it's probably the most important day to get some blood flow. What I've found is going and walking a couple miles throughout the day. You don't have to do it all at once, but like small, low impact movements have helped my recovery significantly. What do you think about walking?
I'm a huge fan. So I do it pretty much as often as I can. So with my fat loss journey that I'm going through right now, fasted, low intensity, steady state cardio is a big component of that. There's always going to be the debate of like, do you need to do it fasted or not? I don't think it makes a huge difference, but if there is any difference, I want to take advantage of it. That's kind of a whole different kind of topic. But we're humans, like we're meant to walk. Like that's what our body is designed for. So I'll do that before work as often as I can. And I actually have a newborn. He just turned 8 weeks. So we try to take him for a walk as much as possible. That's another big component of the vertical diet is Stan Efferding will talk about a 10-minute walk after meals.
Yep.
And how that is, I don't think he can legally say as effective, but almost as effective for blood sugar regulation as taking metformin for people who are pre-diabetic. So it's like you can either take the insulin drug, or you can go do a 10-minute walk and you get almost the same benefit from that. I just think it's fantastic. I'm a big proponent of walking, even just for mental health benefits. It can be fantastic.
What I've recently stumbled upon, which I know this isn't something new, is disc golf.
Sure.
So when you want to go on a walk and maybe you really don't want to walk, but you want to like play or something, going to your local disc golf course, you'll walk 2 miles, or you'll walk 1.5 miles every 9 holes or something like that. And just a little hack, if you're looking for something, someone's just bored and you're like, go on a walk, they're like, oh, I hate walking. Well, go do disc golf because it's pretty much just walking.
Yeah, if you don't want to just like slug away on a treadmill, like
right.
That's my go-to now because it's like regulated. During COVID, we would go for a walk, throw a rucksack on, and do that all the time, or go for a bike ride, and just do like a real low intensity, heart rate no higher than 110 or 120. Focus on nasal breathing, and then just put on some music that just makes you feel good, like just some feel good music, and the benefits that can have for some different aspects of mental health it just makes you feel awesome. Very parasympathetic, kind of like I mentioned before. It's really, really good stuff.
Sweet. Well, so I mentioned your Instagram handle. Where can people find you the best?
Yeah, Instagram is definitely the big one. It's at the Volleyball Strength Coach. Technically, I have a Facebook page that I'll just like repost from Instagram to Facebook if I remember. And technically, I have a TikTok. I haven't posted anything on it. Like I thought I would just like cross post my reels, and I just haven't done it yet. So Instagram is the big one. That's, you can find my volleyball program through there. I do have an ATG based program specifically for volleyball players. Going to be making a couple little tweaks to that, so I'm excited, and that's going really well. But yeah, I post every day, and I'm just trying to just get the content out to the people, and it's been it's growing pretty quick. The response I've been getting is very positive, so I'm excited that I finally have that opportunity to just have a positive influence on people.
All right, sweet. Well, that's all we've got for this one, and thanks for joining.
I appreciate it. Thank you.